Alors, bonjour, mon nom est Pierre Godbout et j'animerai ce webinaire. Avant de laisser la parole aux présentateurs des conférenciers, voici quelques consignes d'usage. Au bas de votre écran, veuillez fermer votre caméra si ce n'est pas déjà fait. Pour activer la boîte de chat, cliquez sur l'icône bulle en bas à droite et la période se fera à la fin de la présentation. Please shut down your camera if it's not already done, not for the presenter. And the question period will take place at the end of the presentation. Je laisse maintenant la parole à Franck Grenon.
Merci Pierre. Alors, bonjour à tous. Je suis Franck Grenon, gestionnaire sciences, programmes et politiques forestières de la division planification, partenariat et opération du Centre de foresterie des Laurentides. Bienvenue à ce 9e webinaire de la 36e saison des colloques du SCF-CFL. La conférence aujourd'hui porte sur les défis et les opportunités dans la gestion et l'utilisation des terres par et pour les communautés autochtones, un exemple appliqué pour la bioénergie et la conservation dans l'ouest du Canada. C'est avec plaisir que je vous présente les conférenciers d'aujourd'hui, Nicolas Mansuy, Sharlene Alook et Matt Munson. Nicolas Mansuy est chercheur au Centre de foresterie du Nord du Service canadien des forêts et professeur adjoint à la Faculté des sciences de l'environnement et économie de l'Université de l'Alberta à Edmonton. Il dirige des travaux sur la gestion intégrée des paysages et la restauration des paysages perturbés, et il supporte aussi le développement de la bioénergie dans les communautés éloignées et autochtones. Sharlene Alook est une Neheo Iskweo, une femme cri de Kissipikamak, Big Stone Cree Nation. Sharlene est étudiante à la maîtrise à l'Université de l'Alberta, où elle effectue des recherches pour documenter l'importance de la terre pour la santé et le bien-être des Neheyawak, peuple cri. Finalement, Matt Munson est technicien en système d'information géographique pour le département des terres et des ressources de Deneta First Nation. Il est actuellement responsable du développement des plans d'aménagement pour les aires de conservation ainsi que la gestion des connaissances autochtones traditionnelles pour Deneta First Nation. Je vous souhaite un bon colloque et je laisse maintenant la parole à Sharlene pour ouvrir cette rencontre. Merci.
Anse, kakio, nanaskomonan, kapintomiak, kapikskwatamag, niatuskun. Instawitinan ota, eayak, miskochiwaskaigan, negotoasik, temap tepamatuin aski. Kayas, igi mamawenit, nitok, nihiawak, nagawiniwak, Basketiuyasit, Otipipsuak, Ochipuayaniwak, Equa, Asinio, Wiwatak. Hello, everyone. We are thankful that you have invited us here to share our projects. We acknowledge we are here in Beaver Hills House in Edmonton, Treaty 6 territory, traditional meeting space of the Cree, Saulteaux, Blackfoot, Métis, Dene, and Nakota Sioux. Hi, thank you.
Hello everyone, bonjour tout le monde. Thanks Sharlene for the land acknowledgements here in Edmonton, Treaty 6, and up north in Treaty 8, where all this work is taking place. So aujourd'hui, ça va être une présentation un petit peu particulière. Ça va être un mix d'anglais et de français. Et je voudrais vraiment remercier l'invitation du Centre forestier des Laurentides pour cet événement aujourd'hui. Et quand j'ai reçu cette invitation pour parler des travaux que je faisais avec les Premières Nations ici en Alberta, je me suis dit que plutôt que moi je parle de mes travaux, je voulais vraiment donner la place aux gens avec qui je travaille. Donc, aujourd'hui, on a vraiment beaucoup de chance d'avoir Sharlene et Matt pour parler de leurs propres travaux, que ce sont vraiment leurs travaux qui se déroulent sur leur territoire et dans leur communauté. Donc, c'était vraiment important de leur donner une place et leur donner une audience comme aujourd'hui. Donc, j'apprécie beaucoup l'invitation. La présentation, c'est ça. Donc, la présentation va être en 3 étapes. Je vais d'abord faire une présentation assez rapide du contexte. Ensuite, ça va être Sharlene et Matt. Et ensuite, on va revenir à moi sur mes travaux sur la bioénergie. Donc, pour commencer, c'est vraiment important de dire qu'il y a une reconnaissance de plus en plus du rôle des peuples autochtones dans tout ce qui est la gestion du territoire. Puis là, on parle de choses très, 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 très larges. Donc, la biodiversité, la lutte au changement climatique, mais aussi la bioénergie. Donc, on va en voir plus tard. Mais c'est aussi important de mettre en avant que malheureusement, les peuples autochtones ont été très rarement impliqués dans ces prises de décision-là. Et donc là, aujourd'hui, on essaye de développer des approches et des méthodologies où justement on change ce paradigme-là. Donc on a besoin d'une vision nouvelle, on a besoin d'une vision holistique sur ces choses-là, justement pour combiner des approches modernes et traditionnelles dans la science, mais aussi dans la recherche de solutions. Donc, c'est vraiment une espèce d'approche multidisciplinaire qui va chercher des approches communautaires, des approches scientifiques aussi modernes, mais vraiment aller essayer de comprendre c'est quoi la vision au niveau des communautés autochtones. Donc, le contexte international, donc quand on parle de la conservation et puis plus généralement des droits avec les peuples autochtones, c'est vraiment important de mentionner qu'il y a cette déclaration des Nations Unies sur les droits des peuples autochtones depuis 2007 et que depuis très récemment au Canada, c'est devenu une loi. Donc, si on fait ça, c'est qu'il y a un contexte juridique qui existe aussi. Et donc maintenant, on peut plus faire de la gestion du territoire sans impliquer les peuples autochtones. Donc c'est vraiment très important de mentionner ça. L'autre chose qu'il faut aussi comprendre, c'est qu'il se passe plein de choses en ce moment au niveau international, notamment au niveau des engagements pour la biodiversité, pour les changements climatiques, pour la restauration des paysages qui sont dégradés. Et on a besoin d'aller chercher l'expertise autochtone dans ces territoires-là. Pourquoi? Parce qu'il y a de plus en plus d'études qui ont montré que les terres étaient mieux gérées, les pratiques étaient plus durables. Juste un chiffre ici, là, il y a 36% des terres intactes de la planète qui sont encore sous juridiction autochtone. Donc, il y a vraiment des chiffres concrets, puis on essaye d'aller utiliser ça, d'aller utiliser ces faits-là pour améliorer les pratiques de gestion. Récemment, la COP26 donc, a annoncé l'automne passé donc, pratiquement 2 milliards qui vont être versés directement aux peuples autochtones en reconnaissance justement de leur rôle clé dans la sauvegarde de la planète et du climat. Donc, ça devient de plus en plus concret. Donc, ici au Canada, on essaie de développer des approches. Le contexte national, ici au Canada, bien sûr, vous le connaissez, il y a la Commission de la vérité et de la réconciliation qui est très importante. Et puis, cette commission-là vient aussi avec un appel d'action. Donc, on est obligé non seulement de reconnaître ça, de reconnaître ces injustices, de reconnaître cette colonisation passée, mais on est aussi obligé d'aller de l'avant avec des actions concrètes pour impliquer de plus en plus les communautés autochtones dans la gestion du territoire. En termes d'actions concrètes puis d'engagement au niveau international, il y a 35% du territoire qui doit être protégé d'ici 2025. Et il y a aussi un autre 30% qui doit être protégé d'ici 2030. Donc là, puis ça, ce sont je ne sais pas si vous vous souvenez de la Convention sur la biodiversité. Donc, c'était la Target 1 qui voulait qu'on augmente nos aires protégées. En termes des changements climatiques, bien sûr, il y a la stratégie net zéro émission d'ici 2050, d'ici 2050. Et il y a beaucoup d'attentes pour ce qu'on appelle les solutions basées sur le climat. basé sur la nature, pardon. Et donc là, on a l'obligation d'impliquer les peuples autochtones. Mais quand on parle d'aménagement du territoire et quand on parle de territoire en santé, c'est beaucoup plus important que ça pour les peuples autochtones. Donc là, vous voyez sur ce schéma ici, donc c'est vraiment un résumé assez simple, mais on parle pas juste d'écologie ou d'environnement. Il y a des facteurs vraiment très importants. Donc bien sûr, la réconciliation. Réconciliation, ça s'accompagne de justice, de droit, ça c'est très très important. Mais ça a aussi des impacts sur la bien-être et la santé des populations. La spiritualité, essayer de comprendre la connexion entre le territoire, entre les cultures autochtones, c'est primordial pour développer des approches sur le long terme. Il y a des impacts énormes sur l'histoire, qu'est-ce qui s'est passé. Le concept de décolonisation est très très important. Si on parle de conservation, il ne faut pas oublier que les premiers parcs, les premiers grands parcs nationaux ici comme Banff ou Jasper en Alberta, la première chose qu'ils ont fait quand ces parcs ont été déclarés, c'est tout simplement d'enlever les populations autochtones, d'effacer l'histoire, la culture, etc. Donc il faut revenir, il faut revenir là-dessus, il faut développer des méthodologies, des approches qui permettent de réconcilier. Et bien sûr, l'éducation, c'est très important. On parle aussi du leadership. Le leadership autochtone, c'est très important. On veut vraiment leur donner les pouvoirs de gérer, de décider, de savoir ce qui est bon pour eux. Donc, le plan de la présentation, comme je vous l'ai dit, donc Sharlene va parler de son projet sur les travaux qu'elle fait dans sa communauté. Sharlene est en co-supervision avec moi avec l'Université d'Alberta. Ensuite, il y a Matt qui va parler du développement de l'aire de protection et conservation autochtone dans le nord de l'Alberta, au lac Bistcho. Et puis, je vais finir la présentation sur mes travaux avec la bioénergie. So, Sharlene, I give you the floor. And just let me know to move the slides.
Thank you, Nicolas, for the introduction. Today, I am going to discuss my research, and it is the Indigenous toponyms of Chipewyan Lake, Big Stone Cree Nation, Alberta, Canada. Next slide. So this project was first initiated by U of A under their Track and Change project. You can find the whole website. I attached the link for your review, but they have done immense work with Indigenous people and the Mackenzie Basin River with Bistcho communities and people in all over Canada. Actually, work is done to protect, bring awareness to the rivers, the waters, the lands, the connections Indigenous people have to their way of life and the animals that they continue to live off of. So it is a collaboration of Treaty 8 and Natural Resources Canada. I'm so appreciative of their support, and these meaningful partnerships are needed now more than ever to ensure Indigenous people have this support, because so much of their territory is being, how do you say, I don't want to say destroyed, but it is being reshaped, and that is due to the resources being extracted. And through this work that I've done, I was an employee with Treaty 8 back in 2017, where I first started this project with U of A. They did community engagements in urban areas, but also in other communities. We would go into First Nations of Treaty 8 Alberta to talk about their traditional territories and how these places are impactful and were impactful to them of how they continued their livelihoods. So capturing these stories from elders, from leadership, and looking at maps today do no justice to what Indigenous knowledge have on their territories. But that is what really gave me the motivation, the passion to pursue my education in this area. And I'm really grateful for Brenda Parley and Nicolas for being so supportive in my journey. And they've done so much just by listening to my presentations and just being there. And I'm grateful for that. Next slide, Nicolas. So my title of my thesis research is Conserving and Learning from the Land for Miupimatsuwin. Miupimatsuwin means a good life, a balanced life in Cree. So maintaining traditional knowledge for health and well-being through Indigenous place names in Chipewyan Lake in the traditional territory of Big Stone Cree Nation. So Chipewyan Lake is where my ancestors are from. They've dispersed to Fort McKay and they've come to Wabasca. They've went to High Level. They went to all over Alberta and Canada. So Chipewyan Lake is a very old community, has a lot of history. Very little research has been done for this place. That's my grandma on your left side of your screen. She's made hides for, clothe her children, make moccasins. It's a long task to get the finalization of hide. A lot of work, but she did it for many years for my dad. So, and in the middle picture is how we dry our moose meat. And that is a delicacy now because we don't have much of it because of the modernization and just people choosing to or forced to live the westernized way of life and adopting the diet. So the children there in the picture are from OPK. It's Oskai Basigoneo Gamik School in Cree. That's how it's pronounced in Cree, but in English, it's a place to bring up young children in knowing their culture, their way of life, their language, and understanding that they have this relationship, a spiritual and sacred connection to the land. So that all these pictures are in this, and health and well-being is so broad, so it encompasses so much. It is hard to define in Cree these two words because it entails so much of our culture, way of life, language, and what is it that we need to do to continue our values that were given to us from the Creator. Next slide. So Chipewyan Lake, I took this from the internet of Alberta. Nothing there, but Alberta. So the map itself is, very minimal to any description of Indigenous traditional places. On the right is Chipewyan Lake. I could only capture a small portion of it, but there are about 200 residents there now. Their main language is Cree, and they continue to do the trapping, hunting, fishing. I have conducted interviews, so this lake you see now is experiencing some, I don't know, how'd you say, I don't want to say drought, but it's decreased a lot in water levels. But that's something also, I'm interested in looking into in my research and what the community members see and find through their observations of the fish and the animals surrounding this community that continue to utilize or access this lake for their life and habitat. Next slide. So I'll go into further of my breakdown of my thesis. I really wanted to get into the minds of Indigenous people and really capture their concerns and really express it in our language. So a lot of my paper will utilize a lot of the Cree language in there, and that is something that I cannot not do because it is what defines better how their practices are being diminished through this modernization and current, way of life that they had to adapt to. And so the significance of these places is more impactful in their health. It is their memories of their parents. It is the memories of their once peaceful habitat that was untouched. I hear memories now. I only conducted a couple of interviews, but through those interviews, I can hear how the loss of these trap lines from deforestation and gas plants and oil extraction is imposing on them. It's just come down to just memories now. It's not the pictures they have from these places is what they hold dearly, because that health and well-being is part of their mental state. The feelings of hopelessness, the feelings of detachment, the feelings of just what is it? What hope do we have now if our traditional territories are being degraded? Once there were historical sites that were identified by historians in Alberta, and one of the sites there got cleared out because I don't know if it was a lack of commitment by ALPAC, which is a logging company here, industry that is located outside of Athabasca. But they cleared it with, even though there was a sign posted there that this land is to be protected from any activity. There was a Hudson Bay Company trail there that took people from Wabasca to Chipoyan Lake. Now that's gone. There used to be trails where people can walk on and travel by quad when they could hunt and trap. Those are gone. So what are left are these big mess of clearing that is piles and piles of debris of wood, logs, the roots, everything sticking out. It's just not right to have these places be left in this situation when Indigenous people continue to utilize these places. They are very much still connected to their way of life, and they will practice their way of life. They will continue to go on the land. It's just another challenge again that they have to overcome or just keep going, because that's just the way it's been with our resilience. We will continue our practices because this is where our language derives from, our practices, and that language connects us to Mother Earth. That is the land. It is who feeds us, who clothes us, and protects us. And my second part of my paper then led to the women. I see a lot of the changes. And since I've been around in my community and see them, how women are put in a situation where they have to be submissive and do as they're told and say little. But I know that's not what it was in history. History talks about how Indigenous groups were a matriarchal society. Women made the decisions. They led tribes. They led the nations, made the decisions. They are healers, nurturers, teachers. They ensured traditional knowledge was passed on to the children, and the men respected this. So women, for me, has been a passion also to bring out and show the roles of women as powerful and significant to Indigenous communities, especially now with all the impacts to our land. We need to educate our children. We need to be in the forefront. We need to be in these leadership roles. We need to express how industry, how educational systems, how patriarchal systems have suppressed our roles, but not anymore. And that is what I want to bring forward in my second part of my paper, is showing that Indigenous women still carry these roles, still have a voice, and will continue fighting for the communities that need that representation. Next slide. So the treaties, they were signed in Treaty 8 on June 21st, 1899. They have been breached many times, still continue to be. The unfulfilled treaties, they deny Indigenous rights. The exclusion of their legislations, the Canadian legislation, excluding Indigenous voices, Indigenous input in how these legislation need to be could or should impact Indigenous people. The cultural destruction from these treaties brought residential schools. And I'm sure you have all heard of the 215 children that were found in Kamloops of the unmarked graves. They continue to happen throughout Canada, these Indigenous residential school interviews of elders that need to share any awareness, any knowledge of any deaths by their schoolmates, of where they could be buried. I was in Wabasca a week ago, and that's where I was for a couple of days with my dad, who is a residential school survivor. They're still not they're not ready to talk about their past or the experiences of residential school, as they tried for so many years to bury these horrific experiences. And these treaties were meant to bring peace, relationships, partnerships of sharing this land. But it has brought grief and anguish, trauma to Indigenous people. It has taken away their livelihoods, their culture, their languages. It has outlawed their traditional practices, to do sun dances, to do potlatch. So these treaties have imposed a lot of damage to our cultures, our languages, our spirituality, to adopt catechism, Christianity. And through this treaties, Next slide. The Indian Act. Indian Act came. This is a piece of legislation that continues to exist. This is the legislation that Canada uses to identify who is Indian, to identify who is through their status system. And this has discriminated Indigenous women severely. As I mentioned, women were suppressed to be autonomous in their communities because women had to face this double burden that being discriminated against as a woman and further as being Aboriginal. This falls under the missing and murdered Indigenous women as being not valued. We were to be, again, submissive to the men by, and this is research I conducted, taken on courses that could make you a good housewife. Those were, that was the education given to Indigenous women. How to be a good housewife, how to cook, how to make your man happy. That was the goal for women. And through these non-Aboriginal settlers, brought with them their patriarchal social codes and beliefs and tried to make sense of Aboriginal society through a patriarchal lens. The Indian Act is all patriarchal. They were disenfranchised when they married a non-Indigenous person, man. They lost their treaty rights, their indigeneity. They fought to be Indigenous, Indian, to get their status back, and finally won the case in 1985. So they also were not given the privilege to run in leadership until 1951, to even vote. And still to this day, Indigenous communities are led by male-dominant chief and council, because that has been adopted, and that needs to change. That we need to bring this awareness and know that women are leaders, have a voice. They need to be part of this changes made in communities. A man cannot only decide on how women should live when they don't know even how to walk it with women's footsteps. So this Indian Act is also a blessing and a curse. The Indian Act shows that there were treaties. These treaties still exist. These treaties continue to exist. The Indian Act, yes, is that curse that we are confined to it. But at the same time, I believe and I have hope that this Indian Act will be changed to meet Indigenous way of life, and they decide how their communities thrive. Next slide. Climate change comes from these policies through NRTA, which is a Natural Resource Transfer Act of 1930 that states that they will have the right to come into traditional territories to access the resources of the land, water, and oil. In the treaties, it states that they will not go further than 2 inches off the ground. But did oil, Syncrude or Suncor, did Canada, did Alberta acknowledge these treaties to include Indigenous people surrounding these plants? There's one picture there of the logging. It's a storage facility. Right now, my dad has a trap line. Can't trap on there. Very little animals that to trap. But they have a large storage facility there for storage place for logs. It's very sad and it's very scary. Poor McMurray had that fire, and I think, has that made any real changes? I see more of the provincial government pushing for more oil and gas extraction to meet the demands that are happening even right now. Climate change has created uncertainty. Indigenous people used to predict every month they have a name in Cree of what is to come for that month, like egg laying month. And it's not happening because climate change has changed the weather patterns, and that is no longer happening. So with all the flooding and the homes that are not in quality condition in Indigenous communities, they're most impacted by the activities. And we, again, have to face another challenge to survive, to continue our way of life. How do we do this when these activities continue? So this is what I want to capture too. I need to know and share my knowledge of what climate change truly is. And we can not blame or be accountable. We all are accountable. But at the same time, Indigenous people lack the resources and the capacity to dispute or make any real significant changes to add to their community. And that needs to change. Next slide. So with our Indigenous identity connected to the land, climate change has impacted all of our languages, our livelihood, the health and well-being. I heard Nicolas mentioning earlier of the spirituality, the connection to social, the connection to the history, the culture. It's all connected. Westernized thinking is linear. And I know learning in environmental sociology, many of the discussions were how scholars or in the early 19th century or late 19th century would indicate that there was no connection to the land. But now they're changing that thought. They've changed that, yes, there is connection. And there is a connection to the land. When the land is damaged, so are the people. And these are all prophecies from elders. They were aware and are aware of the damages coming forth, but nobody's listening. And also the health and well-being is the medicine wheel. That's what we know. It's there. It's our mental, spiritual, emotional, and physical well-being. That is hard to achieve. It's hard to achieve right now because of what we consume, all the processed food. The diet has changed. The mental illness, the traumas we've experienced from residential schools. The physical, we don't go hunt anymore. We don't need to go hunt or pick berries, or we can't. We go to the store now. So there's a lot of impacts to our health and well-being. And with this, I will not see that I can accomplish to capture it all, but I'll do my best because it'll be an ongoing research for sure. And medicinal plants, that knowledge is for me, has been gone. I know a bit about it, the rat root and the spruce gum. My mom used to give me that as a child. My grandmother was a medicine woman, but she wasn't allowed to pass down her knowledge. She used to make medicine tea for people who were sick with pneumonia or cancers. All this is going into our water system. It's going up north. We live in the north. Southern people here in urban settings don't know the impacts because they have good water systems, treatment plants here to fight off the contaminants. We still don't have a water treatment plant back home. We have to use the municipality district number 17, their water treatment plant. And we pay a hefty fee to utilize that treatment plant. So our stewardship to this land is also been cut from us. We have a responsibility. It's not just one-sided that I talk about Indigenous way of life, but it's our responsibility too, that we need to revitalize our values. We need to bring back this reciprocity. We need to be accountable. Our leadership and everyone that wants to be accountable. And I know, and I hear it, but it's that helplessness when they see that devastation, that degradation of their territory, their traditional hunting grounds impacted. Next slide. So what I see coming out of my research by identifying Indigenous toponyms, place names, is the revitalization of language, learning our history of how our ancestors walked in our territory and taught and shared child rearing practices, hunting, all of the use of a moose, the beavers and the muskrat. That is our delicacy, but we cannot consume it anymore because of the taste in them. Elders say they taste different. We need to decolonize these maps that are in existence right now. As I mentioned earlier, in how Alberta looks, there's no Cree places, there's no Cree names, Dene names, Blackfoot. Those need to be included in the map, that these places exist and continue to be utilized. We need to protect and conserve these places by showing that they exist. And with that, meaningful partnerships with industries, academic institutions, and governments. We all need to work together. It's just been Indigenous people fighting for environment, trying to relay this spiritual connection. Non-Indigenous people will not understand, and that's okay. But we are here to teach. We are here to share our knowledge. We are not, how you say, we are not here to not want to work with you. Definitely, we want to work with you. We have to work with you. As you know, the tools that you have will definitely benefit who and what we need to do for future generations. The youth are suffering. The youth need to gain this knowledge. They are our future leaders. How can they know to contribute their knowledge or their leadership if they don't know what they want to protect, if they don't know what education is important to them? STEM currently holds very few Indigenous students, and that needs to be promoted. Science needs to be top of the list in most educational institutions for Indigenous youth. They need to be introduced. They need to experience, and through this is land-based learning. So if you expose them to the land, expose them to the hunting, expose them to trapping, they will understand. This will bring that change to integrate this research, the maps, bring it into school curriculums, and just have elders, all members involved. For me, I am an optimist. I have hope. I had an elder ask me, why are you doing this? What's the point? Isn't it lost already? And I said, it may look like it, but is it better to do nothing at all? Is it better, or is it to do something to capture something than nothing? So my hope is whatever my paper, my research comes and brings out, I will share it with my community and with the youth that are in schools. Next slide. The challenges I see, though, are us, Indigenous people, being excluded in these policies. And even with, it still continues to this day, we're not involved in anything. We are told after the fact that it's been implemented and we have to deal with it. We protest, then we're called we're resisting. Well, we have no choice. We're not included in any of the decision-making or any future changes that may happen to the land. And that's that lack of meaningful consultation. The current policies continue to suppress Indigenous way of life. And our Indigenous leadership is so focused with so many things that government throws at them. Their time is limited. The Indian Act has given them this electoral system where they have to change every 4 to 6 or maybe 4 years. So when new leadership comes in, you're re-educating. They have new agendas. They have new priorities. So this is a very big challenge to our communities. It's very hard to focus on changes when the changes happen within leadership. So I think that's a big challenge. And Indigenous people have become disconnected. And that's where I was mentioning earlier with the elder, well, what can we do? And how do I know I'm disconnected if I've never felt connected? Through residential school, my dad wasn't able to share his knowledge because he was dealing with his trauma, with his pain, through addictions. And we had my grandma, who also was told not to share her spiritual knowledge of medicines because of Christianity. Our own people were teaching and preaching about culture as a cult, and that really is something we are working against. I will not romanticize that it's accessible and easy to do, but I'm willing to go through the challenges than to do nothing at all. So I really appreciate all your time and thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sharlene. So now we're gonna switch to Matt's slides. Just checking on the time up here. Are we good?
Depends how long Matt and you will speak. It's presently
I think we
17. So go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, go ahead, Matt.
Okay. Bonjour. My name is Matthew Munson. My French is not as good as I would like to, but I really do appreciate the invitation today. It's very nice to sit with you today and share some of the work we're doing. Yeah, so I would just like to introduce the Bistcho Lake Indigenous Protected and Conserved Area Project. We have quite a very strong collaboration. We have a lot of partners and allies, Natural Resource Canada being one of many, but certainly we do have a few research projects directly with them, and also they do contribute some funding for some of our projects. So we're going to kind of do the quick version here. So please advance to the next slide. Just briefly, Indigenous protected and conserved area are, essentially areas that have a really long history of occupation and use, where First Nation people have, survived and thrived, for many thousands of years. A lot of the things that Sharlene mentioned about Indigenous laws, governance, knowledge systems, ways of living on and with the land is really to the heart of culture. Next slide, please. Yeah, there's 3 essential elements here. So Indigenous protected and conserved areas come about through some of the international commitments actually Canada has been aspiring towards internationally. We have the pathway to Target 1, which is the idea of conserving 25% of the land and water by 2025. So we're, got about 2.5 years left to hit that target. One of the methods that they had identified that would be useful to that goal would be to develop a way to work with Indigenous people. That's Métis, Innu, First Nations, of course. And we would be identifying areas that really are in the heart of our territories that we would most like to have protected, given the fact that there are other people in Canada, and we do have we must share and coexist together. So that essentially having Indigenous-led community identified areas. We would like to represent these with commitments to conservation. So I know different jurisdictions have different legislation and rules around creating conservation areas or parks or habitat type mechanisms, and also elevating Indigenous rights and responsibility. And so this really means that the treaty rights also that Sharlene mentioned, that these would remain good areas to hunt, trap, and fish. And also, it's not just about rights. We have a responsibility to make sure that that the habitats are good and sufficient, and that the species are doing well, the water's clean, that kind of thing. There are reciprocal responsibilities to rights. So we want to honor where the rights have arisen from. Next, please. Here's us doing some work at the lake. That's myself. That's some of our elders there. So I am a technician. So my job is to prepare information and research. We combine kind of scientific methods to investigate traditional knowledge and to bring traditional knowledge and Western scientific knowledge together in ways that benefit both. And I have an example of that. Next slide, please. Yeah, here's a nice picture of really good peatlands, where you can find peat and sometimes even tundra. The frozen, really good frozen areas are where Labrador tea. So that's a traditional medicine. Where you find Labrador tea is where you'll find really good peatlands and carbon sinks and caribou habitat. So that's one of the indicators that we have. Next, please. Another good picture here of the lake shore. It's really interesting if you ever get to go there. Perhaps with Nicolas, we'll be heading up there in the summer. Maybe you can tag along. But we do have a really nice examples here of northern boreal setting. Sorry, I'm gonna just skip this. We need to keep moving on here. That's a story for maybe when you come up with us in person. So in a Canadian context, I'm not going to read through slides, but this is from the report, Indigenous Circle of Experts, We Rise Together. And this did arise out from that Canada Pathway to Target 1 goal. Next, please. This is the late Elder Willie Chambeau. As you can see, he's mapping exactly where he grew up on the lake and where his father took him and his grandfather took his father. This map, actually, this one, you can see the level of detail that he's putting into each of the trails. He's putting a dot. Most people will draw a line really quickly, but he's really meticulous in putting in exactly where he remembers these. He wanted us to recut these trails and use them for winter access back up to the lake. And then also on the map here, you can see he's marking up locations, and these were some of the locations that we ended up putting our remote caribou camera traps. Next, please. This is a traditional territory map. It's a little bit spotty here, but what you can see is the red boundary is our territory. There's a watershed up around the Bistcho Lake. That's the Petatot. And then we've got some administrative boundaries in the Caribou Range boundary. And so these boundaries we're looking to do some multi-stakeholder engagement with others in the area and see what they think about our idea to have a protected area up there. And, we don't want to unilaterally impose upon anyone else because we don't like that when people do that to us. So we're going to go and have conversations about the idea and see what other people think. And hopefully we can all arrive at something that is suitable to everybody up there. And it's not about building a wall and keeping everyone out, but we do want to have certain principles applied and a management plan and some operations that will keep the things that are important to all of us alive and well and for now and into the future. Please, next slide. Sharlene was mentioning about place names. Here's some of ours. We've been doing archaeology work for many years now. Before, our archaeologists were telling us how they couldn't find anything. And then we said, well, why don't you bring an elder with you? And now every time they put down a shovel, it seems that they're finding exactly what they were looking for. So that's one way to have traditional knowledge inform into this archaeology. And then on the map on the right, we have about 100 or so place names that elders had mentioned, and behind each name is a story. So just like in English and French, you have places that are named. There's always a story behind that. Next, please. Archaeology, through the work that we've been doing over the years, we've been able to designate the entire lake shores as a culture. So in Alberta, we have legislation protecting heritage sites, and we have designated entirely around the lake the need for field work to be done if anyone ever wants to come in there and develop. It's a regulatory protection. Next, please. Here's a map that I created showing a really busy landscape of some of our areas that we've GPSed. Next, please. We do have some early accounts. This one is from the 30s. Our community was not doing very well at that time, just being confined to the reserves. We had some food security issues, and one of the solutions proposed by one of the forestry agents was that there would be this hunting reserve, which you can see really kind of lines up with our territory map. But this is a very large area that was going to be exclusive for Dene people and have the right to go and hunt without a permit. Next, please. Sorry, I should qualify the last statement. We do have rights to hunt without permits, but that would be essentially a giant registered trap line in a sense. This is our lake reserve on the lake, southeast corner. We have cabins there that we're hoping to turn into a ranger type station or a base of operations for our guardian stewardship program. Next, please. Caribou telemetry on a map on the right. This is government caribou data. And then these pictures on the right are from our caribou camera traps that we've deployed around. Next, please. This is noting other values up there. There's a lot of carbon in the soils. There's a pristine watershed, really not a lot of oil and gas, no forestry at all. The 12 species at risk that we're monitoring. And, it's just a really intact area. There's a really good opportunity to keep it that way. A lot of the province elsewhere has been developed, but here it is relatively good still. There's still a chance. Next, please. Here's some industry. This is the industrial footprint, oil and gas wells. seismic lines. What's not shown here is forestry, which would add another very large density. But you can see not too bad, like I said. Thank you. Next. Here's some goals. I'm not going to read through those. I mentioned them mostly. Next, please. We have a video that I don't know if we have time for that. Maybe we'll just get through the slides.
Yes. Maybe you can talk about more in detail about the apps that you develop.
Yeah, thanks.
Oh,
Yeah, so
sure.
yes, this app we had a grant through Environment and Climate Change Canada. This one was through the Nature Fund envelope, which was quite substantial a few years ago. And there was a competitive application for Indigenous Guardian, different tiers. And so we applied for tier 1, which was really a kind of a introduction or beginnings of a Guardian program, and we were successful. I know there were close to 200 applicants, and we were one of 20 that were selected. So I like to think the reason we were selected is because we were building a kind of a really cutting edge modern day tool using the best, most recent available, spatial remote data collection technology. So this app, you can download it from Google App Store or what's the Apple one? It's Android or Apple. And what it is, it's called Survey 123. It's part of the Esri ArcMap suite of products, and we took this tool and kind of out of the box, and then took it to our community and asked them, what do you want in it, and how do you want that organized, and what types of menu-driven, drop-down menu-driven pick list items do you want in there, and how should we collect? How should we help you collect data that's important to you as a traditional harvester? And so this is what we've been able to develop. We now have over 1,000 data records now. There's the ability to take pictures here that are geolocated and watermarked. Western scientific equipment you can input into this app. And so if you're doing water testing or weather stations or even caribou camera array monitoring, you can put that information in here too. We have to do an update. So now that COVID is gone, hopefully forever, or at least reduced, we'll be able to meet with the community again. I was going to show a live demo of this, but I think maybe another time. But we do have it's over 100 community members have this taken upon themselves to download it and go out and use it. Even though they're not being paid money or anything, they still want to use it. And the youth are actually teaching elders how to use the app, and they're going out and while they're hunting and fishing and trapping, they're bringing the youth more so they can actually they can use the tool. And so everybody wants to be a part of this project now and have their data in the system. This is a cloud-based Esri file geodatabase that I manage. I have the privilege to manage that. Okay, next, please. Here's some of the field work, camera deployment. Next, please. This animation, can you click on it to see if the animation will run?
Oh, I don't think it's going to work.
Okay.
No,
Well,
it's just a picture.
Yeah, you can see coming out of this one's okay. Yeah, so we did have an animation. The cameras are motion detected, tripped motion cameras. So you can actually animate if there's a lot of activity in front of that camera, it'll just keep taking pictures. And so you can kind of set those up as an animation. And so that previous slide was about 8 to 10 caribou milling about in front of the camera, and they were in really good shape. And that camera was one of the places where the elder said, if you put a camera there, you will find lots of caribou. He was right. And now we have that traditional knowledge kind of, validated or supported by like Western scientific data. And we're able now to, if you see on the picture on the left, there's a collar. So now with this animal, we are able to work with government scientists to identify that animal because we have it geolocated time and place, and now we can track where that animal has been. And it turns out that this female is alive and well and still sending telemetry back that is in different places. So that means she's still out there and about. There's more I could tell you about this. The spot, this is on an island in the middle of the lake. This island, we believe, is intergenerational learning from the maternal side. So expectant mothers are coming to this island, giving birth, and the calves that are female that one day have calves of their own remember this island, and they come back to calf here. And so what this island is a predator refuge. There are no predators on this island. And we believe that this is actually one of a very unique place in Canada and also perhaps even the world where we have an island being used intergenerationally by species as a predator refuge. So this is intergenerational caribou knowledge being passed down. Next, please. Yeah, okay, well, that's the end of the slides. We do have a video, if it's 4 minutes, and it's a video of the lake. Short documentary by River Voices, and this was a part of the Environment Canada projects that we did, and this video was actually shown in Marseille, France, and that was part of the Forum on Global Biodiversity. So this video has been shown to other nations. Yeah, thank you very much. Merci. Really nice to be here, and I'm really honored and privileged to share with you. Thank you. Merci.
Thank you very much, Matt. Because of the time, I suggest to move directly to the conclusion. Pierre, do we have time for the video? 4 minutes? Or maybe at the end of the...
Yes, for sure, but you don't have your own presentation?
Yeah, but I think there is nothing more to add after Sharlene and Matt's presentation. So
yeah. We can listen to video now, and maybe you will be able to put the link, or I'm gonna copy the link too on the chat. And well, but go ahead with the 4 minutes, and we have already for a few questions though, so go ahead.
Okay, we'll do that.
Please. Va falloir que tu enlèves le pointeur laser, tu te remettes en mode clic. Merci.
This lake and the surrounding area of the land.
Nick, we're not seeing it on the screen.
Non, tu dois partager ton écran, Nicolas. Là. Arrête le partage de la présentation PowerPoint, puis...
Indigenous protected and conserved area here.
Okay.
Once you find the connection there.
Nick, maybe we can just skip that. We're having tech issues, maybe.
Non, Nicolas, il faut que tu arrêtes ta partage d'écran. Et si tu shares, il faut complètement t'arrêter cet écran-là. Puis probablement que le lien YouTube s'est ouvert dans un autre écran. Donc, tu peux peut-être faire partager, puis choisir le bon écran où ce que le YouTube s'est connecté.
OK. Est-ce que vous voyez mon écran là?
Non, pas pour tout de suite, là. Je vois pas que tu...
To understand the stories more.
Oh,
Maybe you'll even
Oh,
see
on a-
a scene
OK.
of what was
Okay,
like that.
so we're gonna stop
what it
this.
can be like.
Là, on le voyait, là, Nicolas, mais
From and
faudrait que
whatever
tu
we
commences du
find
début.
or a treasure from back then, you know, all these things can help us regain our strength and to teach us something new.
Can you see it?
No.
Watching? Yes.
Sorry, Nick. On a un petit enjeu de...
Like you.
Sorry, Nick and Matt.
Ouais, je
Oh.
comprends.
I think that we must put the link directly on the chat and move to the period question if you don't mind.
Okay, yeah. So I'm gonna stop this.
Are you good with that, Matt?
Oh, yeah, yes, of course. Yes, please.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so vous me voyez là?
Là, on te voit, on voit tous les participants. Je crois que tu
Okay.
partages. Je crois que tu ne partages pas bien ton écran, mais je crois que là, rendu à l'heure qu'on est, on pourrait partir complètement à la fin, mais je pense qu'il y a quand même des questions. Là. Je veux pas décider nécessairement, là, mais si on a un
Non, mais on peut
technical
prendre des
issue-
questions. J'espère qu'il y aura beaucoup de questions.
alors-
Peut-être pour conclure, Sharlene a bien montré les challenges qui existent et puis Matt a montré, je dirais, les opportunités à merger les deux types de recherche traditionnelle et moderne. Donc, ça a été très bien fait et je les remercie beaucoup pour ça. Donc, on peut prendre vos questions maintenant.
Donc, je vais animer la période de questions. Je vais te demander de arrêter ton partage. Si jamais tu partages, je crois que tu partages quelque chose. Mais...
Non, je partage rien.
En tout cas, peu importe. Là, pour l'instant, je vais donner les consignes. Donc, thank you, Sharlene, and Matt, et Nicolas. Bonjour à tous. Je suis Pierre Godbout et j'animerai la période de questions. Vous pouvez tous maintenant activer votre vidéo si vous le désirez. You can all now activate your video if you wish. Alors, si vous désirez obtenir une attestation de formation continue, notamment en lien avec le règlement sur la formation continue obligatoire des ingénieurs forestiers du Québec, l'unique façon est de compléter l'attestation de participation avec le lien URL et le code d'activité que vous trouverez dans le chat sous peu. Donc, je vais donner les instructions avant de copier tout ça parce qu'on est un peu en retard. Alors, comment procéder pour poser une question? Vous pouvez poser votre question dans la langue officielle de votre choix avec le micro de l'ordinateur ou en cliquant à droite de votre nom dans la liste des participants et sélectionner l'icône main levée. Lorsque je vous nommerai, vous n'aurez qu'à enlever votre mode sourdine en cliquant sur l'icône micro après avoir posé votre question. S'il vous plaît, vous remettre en mode sourdine. Nous souhaitons que vous posiez une question à la fois, autant pour donner la chance aux conférenciers de bien répondre à votre question et de laisser la chance à tous de poser leurs questions. Donc, je ne sais pas s'il y a une auditoire anglophone, là, mais if so, just ask your question directly on the chat or take on the list of participants, select your name and raise your hand. So this is it. You can, vous pouvez aussi, si vous préférez poser votre question par écrit, utiliser la boîte du chat, sélectionner à tous mes contacts, sélectionner l'icône en forme de bulle en bas à droite. Donc, dans les deux cas, on vous demande de vous nommer et de nommer l'organisation que vous représentez. Donc, je vais rétablir le son pour tous. Et puis, on a une première question. So, we have a first question. This is for you, Matt. A question from Nelson Tifo a research scientist who works for Canadian Wood Fiber Center. So can the app be adapted to be used over other territories?
Yeah, I've put in the chat a link to the actual software. It's Esri ArcGIS Survey 123, and with a little bit of GIS background and the ability to use Microsoft Excel spreadsheets and a little bit of kind of SQL light abilities, you can make this do many things. It can be replicated across territories. I know the forestry company that we have a relationship with uses it for their cut block updates, and so I know municipalities are using it for manhole covers to keep track of the state of those. So it's really a useful tool to manage location-based data, and you can customize it to collect whatever you want about that thing. And you can take pictures and record audio. What we've been able to do is we have a function that you can record. And so what our community members do is for the elders, if they don't know how to use the app or speak in English very well, they speak in Dene. Or if there's place names or names of animals or plants, they record audio in Dene. And so I could imagine even for like French language or cultural programs that something similar could happen at in your communities as well. It's really a powerful technology. Before, the limitation was getting accurate and credible spatial data, but now any community member can just use it on their phone, and the technology does the work and creates good data. Now we don't have to use GPS with a camera and a notepad and then create the data later. Thanks.
Merci, Matt. Matt a mis des différents liens, entre autres le vidéo de YouTube et d'autres liens sur la boîte de chat. Donc, si vous voulez vous copier ça, vous pouvez le faire. Donc, de Daniel Quentin pour Matt. For Matt, you have another question. How come the mining and forest industries have not yet reached the area you propose to protect? How much time until they do? How open is the government to create the IPCA?
Yeah, so I'll start with the first part or the last part of the question. The government federally is very open to the IPCA. Provincially in Alberta here, less open to it. And then when you get to the local municipal district level, they're very not open to it. Essentially, when it comes down to crown land, so lands that are not owned by anybody, they're public land. Even though there's nothing on it from humans, they still think that one day there could be something on it, and they don't want to set aside areas that might be worth something to them later. So that's always the challenge. Mining has not been up there because they have tried. They have not found anything yet, or at least that they've told us. So forestry also, we're getting into kind of Tiaga, the tree, it's black spruce. It's not good for forestry products. So that's probably why they're not there. If there was good trees there for that, they would be. And then oil and gas, there hasn't been, it's pretty remote for one. So developing a remote area is always more expensive, getting the products out and people in. But, relatively it's quite still intact. And the reason is that there's really nothing in there that's profitable. So, that's something going for us. Actually, I would say the main threat is having a really intense tourism or recreation, because everyone would need to bring in their snowmobiles and their boats, and right now you can't. There's no road There's no road. So the only way to get in there is in the winter, snowmobile, and then in the summer it's helicopter or plane. So it's remote because there's no roads. So we want to keep no roads there. Yeah, thanks.
J'ai répondu à une question concernant l'enregistrement. Là. Tout comme lorsqu'on fait la convocation, vous avez le lien pour avoir accès aux archives. Prévoyez quelques jours, ça peut aller à plusieurs jours, mais ce colloque-là a été enregistré, donc si l'enregistrement fonctionne, il va être là. Je vous remercie de votre collaboration. Je ne vois pas de main levée. Dans la liste des participants. Je ne vois pas d'autres questions dans le chat. Je vais laisser quelques secondes pour voir s'il y a des gens qui veulent se manifester. Nicolas a une question, donc vas-y.
C'est pas une question, c'est plus un complément d'information pour Daniel par rapport à la position du gouvernement. Il faut savoir que pour l'instant, il y a à peu près 0,1% de toutes les aires protégées au Canada qui sont dirigées par les communautés autochtones. Donc, le Canada est relativement en retard par rapport à ça au niveau global. Et donc, c'est pour ça qu'il y a beaucoup de projets. Actuellement, il y a à peu près 60 projets de conservation qui sont financés par le Guardian Programme d'Environnement Canada. Donc, on essaye de rattraper le retard. Donc, c'est quand même intéressant et important de le mentionner. Il y a beaucoup de choses qui se passent actuellement et puis on essaye de rattacher ça au Nature-Based Solution, lié à la restauration, lié au programme de plantation, etc. Donc, ça bouge beaucoup de ce côté-là, je dirais.
Merci, Nicolas.
I'm putting in the chat the website to the Caribou program. There's a report in there, and it details quite a bit more than we were able to in the slide. But it definitely is creating information that the government doesn't have currently because of just the number of caribou that we're inventorying or we're identifying that don't have collars. So if they don't have a collar, they're not getting any data about that animal. And in this case, we have an entire herd that none of them have collars. So these were invisible, and now we can see them. So that's one of the benefits of having traditional knowledge inform into Western science methods. And there's information that is now available to everyone that wasn't there before. So that's I guess the main message that I would like to relay. Thanks.
For Nicolas, Matt, and Sharlene, you have a lot of congratulations for your presentation. I think we're good. Are you good, Nicolas, Sharlene?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm fine. I would like to thank Matt and Sharlene. It's always a privilege to work with you guys. I learned so much from you.
So
thank you so much.
I will conclude to inform everybody. Just give me a few. Okay. Thank you very much, Sharlene, Matt, and Nicolas, for your presentation. Défis et opportunités dans la gestion et l'utilisation des terres et pour les communautés autochtones. Exemple appliqué pour la bioénergie et la conservation dans l'ouest du Canada. Alors, je voudrais vous informer que le prochain et dernier colloque de la saison, qui devait avoir lieu jeudi prochain, le 14 avril, est annulé. Nous regardons la possibilité de le reporter à une date ultérieure. Si c'est le cas, vous en serez informés. surveiller notre fil Twitter ligne pour en savoir plus. On va vous informer de la suite. Puis, au cas où que nous ne pouvions reporter le colloque du 14 avril, alors le présent colloque qu'on vient d'entendre met probablement un terme à notre 36e saison des colloques du CFL. On vous souhaite un bon printemps et un bon été et à l'automne prochain pour une autre saison. Merci à tous de votre participation et bonne fin de journée. Thanks a lot, Sharlene, Matt, Nicolas. That was great. Thank you.
Merci Pierre pour l'invitation. Réinvitez-nous l'année prochaine, on aura plus de choses à présenter encore.
D'accord, je vais faire le message.
OK. Ciao, ciao. Merci tout le monde. Bye.
Merci.
Merci Pierre pour
Ouais.
cette 36e
Merci,
saison
ciao.
et dernière saison peut-être. Alors, on sait maintenant que c'est la dernière saison. Félicitations pour ton bon travail. Et puis, on se souhaite une autre bonne saison pour la 37e avec une nouvelle animatrice, animateur à suivre. Merci.
Salut tout le monde.
Ciao, ciao. Bye bye.